Welcome to this talk. This is Courtney Lancaster talking about vehicle forensics.
Thank you. Good morning. I am both, thank you. I am both flattered and surprised to see the turnout. I'm still wondering where all the hungover people are. But thank you for coming at any rate. Today we're going to talk a little bit about vehicle forensics. I can tell you this is something that I get really excited about. These are our objectives today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and talk about what we're going to talk about. Then we're going to go into a little bit of history regarding the infotainment and the vehicular technology. As you guys know, this is a really new field, so I'm going to give you guys what I know. We're going to talk a little bit about the way ahead. We'll touch on trends and challenges. And then, of course, we're going to kind of get into the meat and potatoes of things, where we're going to go in and identify the accessing of the components and talk about how do we actually analyze that data. So a little bit about me. I work at Telecommunication Systems, or TCS. I am an art of exploitation instructor, and my primary focus is the forensics track. So we have quite a few forensics classes, and that's where my expertise is. Before that, I was at DC3. Not sure if you guys have heard of that, but it is Department of Defense Computer Forensics Laboratory. I was there for about 5 or 6 years, and then prior to that, I really just focused on information assurance, did some ComSec analysis type stuff, and then of course I am prior Navy. Got to throw that in. All right, let's dive right in. So this is where we started, right? I like to kind of paint this picture for you guys. This is where we are now. Even more robust systems than that. Now, before we go any further, I want to talk about something that is pretty controversial. If you ask 5 people, what is the difference between telematics and infotainment, you're probably going to get 5 different answers. And the reason for that is, honestly, you know, the lines are just pretty blurred. But I'm going to give you guys a pretty standard definition here, okay? Telematics is actually the combination of telecommunications and informatics. Makes sense, right? So basically, this is going to be your wireless connectivity. This is your connectivity. That's the word that you want to remember. Now, infotainment, that's going to be the combination of your information and your entertainment. This is usually what the user is going to identify as your interface, if you will. So those are where your differences are going to lie. Your telematics is going to circle around the connectivity, and then your infotainment is actually going to be more so the interface, the integration, okay? So let's talk about telematics. This has been happening for a while, right? 1996, you guys remember OnStar? When that rolled out? They had kind of a lull there for some time, I believe, but everybody kind of caught on and said, you know what, this is a neat thing. Let's get this going. And of course, they wanted to then integrate the infotainment. Again, this is going to be some of your wireless protocols, and we're seeing more and more of those continue to emerge. More specifically, I want to address 4G LTE. Now, when we talk about the way ahead, towards the end of this presentation, I will tell you guys that is absolutely where a lot of the automakers and the teams that are coming together to do this are trying to go, is with the LTE, okay? So with the increase of infotainment system technology and telematics, the ability to differentiate between the two can be a challenge, okay? And as we move forward, as we continue to integrate, these two are going to become even more and more blurred. All right, this is kind of a fun slide. How many security people do I have in here? Yeah, okay, this is going to scare the ever-living crap out of you. I promise you. I know it does me anyway. All right, so 84%, a recent poll showed, 84% of drivers would like to control their features using touchscreen. Doesn't seem surprising, right? I mean, we already kind of are. But let's go a step further. When I say they want to use touchscreen, I'm talking odometers, gas gauge. They've truly expressed this interest. 83% want to receive updates wirelessly. Anybody see a problem with that? Okay, furthermore, 76% would actually like to connect to the internet using their vehicle as a Wi-Fi hotspot. And I can promise you that's coming. 67% would like to download applications and updates directly to their vehicle. Anybody see a problem there? This guy does. Now this is my favorite, and I like to leave it for the end. 61% would actually like to pay for something using their debit or credit card linked to their infotainment system in their vehicle. I just don't know if that's something I could get on board with. So again, this is what, we went out and we gauged. I mean, this is what people want. They want every single thing, which means we're going to continue to see an increase in user data within these vehicles. And why is this important? Well, because the market will respond. The automotive industry is actually a $2.6 trillion industry. Here in this graph, you'll actually see the forecasted revenue for 2016. Now, I actually believe that this is increased for the forecast for 2016. You guys may have seen, there was a lot of talk at CES a couple of weeks ago regarding telematics and infotainment systems and things like that. So this is, again, wildly popular. It's a good old supply and demand, right? As a mobile society, many of the vehicle manufacturers are actually embracing this. Now, no one really heard this as loud and clear as Ford. And we're going to kind of talk about Ford. I'm going to pick on Ford a little bit today. In 2007, they became what we like to call the game changer. They rolled out their Ford Sync. Now, in the end, what do the consumers really want? What is one thing that they can agree on? Arrive safely while staying connected. That is really the sole purpose of trying to develop things. All the extras come into play as well. But that's the primary focus. Here we are. All right, so what are our challenges? One of the biggest challenges that I want to address, and I mean, this is a really big deal. It's something that a lot of the automakers are really trying to figure out, how do we circumvent this? Typically a vehicle is actually manufactured 3 to 5 years out. That's not cool when you're trying to get the latest and greatest in a car, right? So we look at our mobile devices and we look at these other things that we're using. Those are updated a couple of different times throughout the year. So how do you stay current? Basically, this is kind of the same situation as, if you guys remember in the 90s and you bought a desktop computer and within a year it was obsolete. That's what the automakers are trying to get around right now. One of our other challenges from a forensics perspective is that data can actually be scattered. Data can be located in different areas. Streamlining is not something that we're seeing just yet. And again, this is really pretty much a new field. You're not going to see a lot of tools, commercial tools out there, and we're going to talk about some of the tools as well. But the lack of streamlining with the designs in the infotainment system has actually become a little bit of a challenge. I mean, it's not something that we can't get around. But I always say, when I talk about forensics, the first thing you need to understand is, where is the data stored, how is the data stored, and how can I access the data? Those are 3 big things that you need to understand. And when you have these vehicles rolling these infotainment systems out, it's kind of difficult to stay abreast with that, okay? My clicker does not want to work. There we are. All right, so let's understand some capabilities. So what are we talking about? Today's infotainment systems functionalities contain a multitude of connectivity possibilities. I think we know that. We have Bluetooth, we have USB. So from a forensics perspective, these systems can actually contain a treasure trove of user information. Now, again, that's really scary to me. I'm going to show you guys, I'll tell you a quick story, but I'm going to show you guys some data. So I went out on eBay and purchased a Ford Sync. And I have all of Jerry's information. I can tell you his mama's number. I can tell you where he's from. Who here actually has programmed home into your vehicle with the address? I probably wouldn't do that. That's not something that I would do, because I now know where Jerry's home is. So this information is being turned over. You're trading these vehicles in. There's not a process for wiping this data, right? I mean, does CarMax ever say, okay, let's ensure this is forensically wiped before you leave? No, they don't say that. So basically, someone's leaving with your data when we're talking about used vehicles. So over time, of course, digital forensics has spanned from computers, then, you know, the hot thing was mobile devices, which to me still kind of is. And now I think what you're really going to see is a big push for the vehicle stuff. Because again, everything is beginning to integrate. Everything is really starting to meet in the middle, if you guys haven't noticed that. So yeah, this is a subset that has continued to gain a significant amount of focus within the community. And I think, again, you're going to see it more and more. So let's talk about it from an evidentiary value. What are we talking about? Of course, extensive user data. We're talking waypoints, saved locations, Jerry's home, MP3 files. Now, why would I care about MP3 files? I mean, it doesn't really matter to me that you just downloaded the Miley Cyrus album. But what it can do is that getting this data can assist in you cooperating with other evidence. Okay, does that make sense? Attached devices, that's kind of important. Bluetooth MAC IDs, some email messages can get in there as well, SMS as well, image files, user voice profiles. As we talk about the way ahead and as we talk about what's coming and what's next, I'm going to tell you guys one of the big things that you're going to see, it's going to be more voice-activated features. So when the automakers meet with whoever it is that they need to go out and meet with, they say, how can we make this safe? Eyes on the road and hands on the steering wheel. That's the two things that they want to do. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to make anything and everything that we can possibly make voice-activated, voice-activated. Our VIN numbers, of course, various mobile phone sync data. So a lot of people will ask me when they take my mobile forensics class, I'm actually, it's from a selfish point, but I always like to talk about this as well for just a quick point. But some people will say, well, you know, how is this mobile forensics? And I'm like, well, first of all, how much more mobile can you get? We're talking about a car. And secondly, something that you want to think about is that I've got mobile device information synced in here, right? So you're getting information from these mobile devices as well. User established playlist. Again, why is that important? It could absolutely help you and assist you in cooperating with other evidence, other data. Call logs, I mean, that's just to name a few. All right, so let's move in now a little bit and talk about design. Another particular challenge, again, like I said before, is the lack of the streamlining. Understanding the capabilities of each system can be pretty difficult from the initial phase of beginning diagnostics. How do we approach this? What is our plan of attack with the forensics and with the analysis, obviously? Now, let's go ahead and take a look at Ford. I said we'd pick on Ford. I won't pick on Ford too bad. But because they are what I'm pretty much considering the leader in the market right now, nobody's really doing it well because of the challenges that I've identified. And I think that's, of course, arguable, but there's still a lot lacking. I can say that. So let's look at Ford. Now, we've all heard of Ford Sync, probably. And we've all gotten in someone's rental car or someone's Ford car, and we've said, oh yeah, that's probably Ford Sync. So let's talk about the different types, because not all are created equal. Here you're going to see the in-dash navigation system plus sync. Now this is going to be your standard radio plus sync. Let's jump into the timeline a little bit. So your first generation, again, I said it rolled out about 2007. That was 2007 to 2009-ish, okay? The second generation, you're looking at 2009 to about 2011. The third generation, 2011 to now. Who's good at math? Do you guys see what's happening here? So that leads me to believe, and actually I do know, Ford is actually planning on rolling out their next generation in the 2015 Mustang. So we should see that around the spring. We should find out a little bit more about what it's going to look like. But I can tell you, one of the big trends, apps. And we'll definitely talk about apps. All right, so we're talking about you know, what is our OS? What are we building this on? So basically, it's a Microsoft Windows embedded automotive, or CE automotive in some. This is actually not considered a trimmed down version. This is a customized version. So it's something that you need to understand if you want to learn, or if you want to be able to go in and actually exploit that, right? All right, so back to the generations. We want to talk about understanding what we're dealing with. So our first generation, our sync module, we're looking at Microsoft Automotive. The data stored here is going to be phone-related, music index, paired devices, things like that. Now the head unit that we talked about with the navigation system, the OS on that was Pioneer. The data stored on that was music files, photos, and of course navigation data. Navigation data is huge. You know, I remember when GPS forensics was a big thing. Everybody was like, hey, you know, who's supporting the TomToms or the Garmins? How are we going to get this data off? Now we can go into one single integrated component and actually pull that data off. So then we move into our second generation. Not a whole lot changed. Really just in the head unit for the navigation system, we're looking at a different OS. But there was one big thing here. We're looking at a 40 gig, it was a pay to drive, or it is a pay to drive, I should say. So we were like, okay, that's cool. So we went from solid state storage, we went to having hard drives actually into the vehicle, and now we're going to be seeing more connecting our external devices. And then, of course, our third generation, which we're actually going to take a look at this. I brought you guys a cool video of actually how you go in and disassemble this. I can talk about it, but unless you see it, it's not going to really hit home. So here for our third generation, again, single integrated component. Integration, integration, integration. I can't say that enough. OS is going to be Microsoft Auto OS as well. Something here that we saw was an SD card. So someone gave me a call and said, Courtney, I need you to come over and take a look at this car. We need to do some forensics on it. It's a brand new model, and it has an SD card in the glove compartment, or I'm sorry, in the console. And I'm like, sweet. FTK Imager is free. All I got to do is run over and just grab this thing right out of the center console. Like, this is going to be awesome. So I did, and I imaged it, and I really didn't get that much data. So what is the point of it? It actually, your SD card that resides in those center consoles actually just supports your navigation system, okay? So the present time, we're looking at our single integrated component, right? We're going to break this down a little bit. So the sync module is actually going to be mounted to the back of the screen. All of your user data is actually going to be contained within that sync module. Now, I say all of it. I mean, there are different plans of attack, but if you really want to go for what I've referred to earlier in this talk as the treasure trove of user data, then this is where you want to hit it, okay? There's our SD card. That's really all that happens when you remove it. So that tells me right there what's on it. And then, of course, like I said, imaging it. So what were our previous go-tos? You know, now we're approaching this a little bit differently. Some of our previous go-tos, you know, a lot of people, when I talk about this, you can tell some of the people that haven't really dealt with infotainment systems, because they'll say, oh man, just go for the black box, get all the data off of that, right? And sometimes, yeah, that's, you know, sometimes that is the data that you want. So in a former life, that was really our typical approach. It was the black box, or the, you know, some may consider the event data recorder. This is really popular with our crash investigations, and I'll tell you why. The idea behind the installation of this, to even to begin with, is actually to enable the vehicle to make the decision whether or not we want to deploy that airbag. Now it logs things as well. Essentially records data regarding the native state of the vehicle at any given moment. So you're looking at your seatbelt usage, your speed impacts, and things like that. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. This is my favorite part. They all say I'm really dangerous when you give me a screwdriver, because I love to take all these things apart. So here we've got, for Ford SUVs, the first and second generation, you want to look behind the center console. That's where you're going to find your sync module. It's actually held in with 4 clips. You don't need any special tools. A regular screwdriver will actually work with this. Oh, here. All right. Here I want to show you guys. Oh, wait. So this is going to be our 3rd generation, okay? Again, I can tell you guys all I want, but until you see just how easy it is, and I apologize that this is looking a little skewed. You're actually going to see how this pops off, hopefully. Of course, technical difficulties. So there it is, okay? Now this tool, if I could just freeze that for you guys, but basically, you can see as it pulls out, this port is being exposed on the side. Now this tool that is being used is called Ivy. This is one of the first commercial tools on the market that is actually able to go in and be completely automated. It attaches directly to that port. All right, I think you guys have seen enough of that, because that video is not working out for me. But anyway, that's really just how easy it is. You pop that center piece off, you remove the head unit out, and then that side port, what's cool about Ivy is that it actually made that a 2-way talking point, okay? So you attach that commercial tool, and it will actually begin the extraction. It is very, very easy. So here's what Ivy looks like. And you know, I like to present this because there aren't a lot of commercial solutions, and there's certainly not a lot of automated solutions. So here's Ivy. What you're going to get out of that is you're going to get points of interest, some of your recent destinations, saved locations, and active routes. So it's pretty cool. It just dumps that data automatically for you. And it doesn't take long. That's pretty dangerous, right? Again, I just left my car at CarMax. Someone could acquire this tool, and then they're going to get my data. You can go on eBay right now. I think for $100 is probably one of the mid-range, and you can actually go and buy someone's used sync module. So anyone that wants to try and do that and get some forensic data, call me first, because it's a lot of fun. So here's what your forward sync module is going to look like. Now, another funny story. Someone, same person calls and says, Courtney, okay, sorry about that whole SD card thing. I think we've got something else for you. And I'm like, all right, sweet. It's the flash chip. That's where my data's at. We're good to go. So I take this thing apart, and this is what I see. Does anybody see a problem with this? That's some pretty aggressive epoxy on that, isn't it? Yeah. And I'm not the most graceful, so I could see me burning this board up pretty quickly. So basically, the way we circumvented that was, I did not do this, but we had it done to where it was actually, the data was actually accessed through pinouts. Okay. But if you can, you basically just do a dump of that chip. Okay. This is going to create your binary file for you. And there are a couple of different ways to look at it. I particularly like hex. I don't know why, but I do. And here you will see, these are some song lists and things like that, playlist and some songs that were pulled off of that. Again, what am I going to do? I'm going to take that, if possible, and I'm going to take the mobile device that's associated with the case or whatever the situation is, and I'm actually going to say, yes, this phone was here, and then I'm also going to look at attached devices. Remember all the other items that we talked about that can be pulled? All of it is right here. You can do searches on it. Some of the other tools, I like to tell people what's good and then what's not good, because I want you guys not to have to go down that road. But I try to use bulk extractor, and there really wasn't a lot that I could get off of that. It was a lot of the Microsoft registration data and things like that. But again, there's just not a lot of commercial automated solutions that are out there right now. Of course, you can also image the hard drive for the older generations. This is yet another approach that we're talking about. This is actually in the back of the head unit for the first and second generations. This is it's not that easy popping it out and just imaging the drive. There is typically an ATA password lock on it, and there are ways to get around that, of course. There's always a way. But yeah, Ford is pretty picky about that, and you actually have to, just as a standard user, you actually have to go through them if something happens with your hard drive, unless, of course, you are feeling frisky and want to play with it yourself. All right, so what's ahead? Again, a huge emphasis on the connected car. Everything is wanting to be connected. You've got vehicles that are talking to other vehicles. I left out one thing, and I didn't really want to go down this road, but obviously you can also do different acquisitions through the CAN bus, and the CAN bus is actually going to be basically your network infrastructure of the vehicle. So a lot of the connectivity is actually going to come into play. We want these vehicles connected to other vehicles, other applications, things like that. So what some of the automakers are actually saying is, so what apps do we actually put on here? With safety coming into play, I think it's GM or Ford that's actually saying, yes, we will, GM, I'm sorry, I think it's GM. Yes, we will do like a Netflix thing, but it's actually going to be farmed out to the back seat video heads or screens. So again, they're wanting to keep that safety into play. Again, more app-based interfaces. Anyone that's writing apps right now for vehicles, that's going to be a huge thing. They're going to try to roll in as much as they can that actually makes sense, but it needs to make sense, basically. And then, of course, we talked about more speech-activated interfaces. I mean, after all, as we said, the goal is to keep hands on the wheel and eyes on the road, right? So that's really about all I have. And at this time, I'll go ahead and open the floor for questions, if anyone has any questions. No questions. Hi. Thank you.
These entertainment systems here do a whole lot of whiz-bang stuff that you can see. What kind of connectivity are you seeing to the other physical systems in the car? Brakes, steering, power steering?
I think you asked this question. Okay, so let me make sure I understand your question. You want to know the infotainment system? What is the other connectivity with the infotainment system, or the other components within the vehicle? How it pertains to the other things connected to the vehicle. Understand. Okay, so remember when we talked about the plans of attack? So basically you have your black box, you've got your CAN bus stuff, and then you've got your infotainment system. Your infotainment system, it will log some of the driving capabilities, if that's what we're talking about, but a lot of that is going to come from other areas of the vehicle. There's a program called Vehicle Spy. A lot of that will actually farm out some of that data for you as well. But you're not really seeing a lot of that, and I don't believe that to be one of the goals of the automakers, you know, with controlling that. I mean, I understand we have cars that are parking themselves and things like that, but I don't believe that's going to be the focus for the infotainment systems to come. So, yeah.
So you haven't, purposely haven't focused on a lot of crash data information?
Correct.
But I do have one question for you with regards to that. What if I'm the bad guy, or I'm the guilty guy in a pretty serious accident? How is that data, like I've got a Ford using algorithm that has these systems.
Oh, okay, fun.
How is that data protected, and do I have access to that data? How can I prove that data is reliable? Right? I mean, that's sort of my question. I know this stuff is in court cases, right?
Okay, so in short, I think what you're asking me is, how do I protect my data, right? Specifically with the crash data that we're talking about?
Well, how do I prove that data hasn't been altered with the crash? I go to the junkyard or whatever, look at the wires and lose that kind of thing. If I'm the guy that's
Right. How do you prove the data hasn't been altered and so on and so forth? So here's the thing with black boxes, and a lot of people probably don't realize this, but for a long time we've actually been accessing them and we've been pulling that data out for crashes and things like that. Because again, what is it? It's kind of recording the native state of the vehicle. What a lot of people don't understand is that that data is at times it's actually sporadic. I've heard that it cannot be trusted. And I apologize, I've not done a lot with the black box stuff. But as far as you protecting it, in my opinion, you can't.
Thanks.
I'm going to give you the honest answer. Thank you.
I do agree that the information in the vehicle is quite valuable, especially as more and more information is brought together, like you said, possibly financial information like that. So I think a factory reset feature, that's my big
Yes. The sale of the car? Like trading it in? Uh-huh.
I think car sales is probably relatively
The ODB
Right, so for example, if we have
or OBD.
a shady auto mechanic or a dealer or somebody who's collecting
Right.
all the information on their customers. I can see that as very easily for somebody who's got isolated time with the car. You know, you have some kind of trust and they can.
Yeah, I don't completely disagree with that. But you know, there was a time, probably 5 or 6 years ago, we said the same thing about mobile devices, right? And I think you're seeing it's more common for people to go out and seek that data.
Sure, and I think as we do, you mentioned, consumers interested in wireless features in their cars.
Yes,
Attack vector against
yes.
vehicles.
Yeah, and you know what, that's a whole different area too, is actually getting into hacking the vehicle. Obviously, I stayed off of that, but that's also another, area of concern, certainly. So, yeah, thank you. Okay.
First, the nav data that you showed from the port sync system, was that just addresses and things that were entered into the system, or was that any address writing? And second, do you have any comments on the integration of OnStar into the actual vehicle dynamics of the system? Because I know that the report a year or so ago about the police actually contacting OnStar and using it to shut down vehicles that they had issues with.
Yes, obviously law enforcement is going to, leverage whatever they can. I mean, it's the same thing with, and again, I'm going to refer back to our mobile devices. It's the same thing as law enforcement subpoenaing records and cell towers and things like that. And I'm sorry, what was your first question?
The first question was the nav system data.
Oh,
was any
yes.
nav system data, or was it strictly the stuff that was entered into the...
That was strictly the stuff that was, in that system, yeah. So, but it's actually going to log everywhere you've been, things you've saved, yeah, all that stuff. So, yep.
Just on most of your, all your examples, they were using Windows CE, this, and sure, like 2007, that was the heavy hitter, heavy market.
Right.
With the, emergence of Android or Linux, one of the mobile devices, have manufacturers thought about embracing that and, in that sense, doing more security,
Yes.
like hard drive encryption or anything along those lines?
I don't think we're going to see any hard drives again. We tried that, didn't work. I mean, it worked, but again, it's going to be, we talk about telematics and infotainment. Your hub that we talk about for your infotainment is probably going to be more so something that you're going to use in your everyday life. For example, mine's sitting over there. So you're going to see that more and more. Those are going to be your integration pushes, I believe. So, yep. Yep.
As it pertains to Premier Garden, I know when I sanitizer in the system,
Mm-hmm.
if you just delete your stuff before you, in the regular, it's still there. So
Yeah.
that's not just, or can you overwrite it the same way? If you had a phone and you had yours in, but then you went in and put another, can it overwrite it?
So if you're doing a chip dump, obviously you're going to get all of the data. I don't know about the overwriting part, but I would assume if we're just completely doing a chip dump, you're going to get that data. All of the previously saved things. I mean, obviously, I'm sorry?
Like, let's say, like, one of my cars has 5 on it, so you have 5, then you go back over and overwrite it. And if you continue to overwrite it, you don't know if it's possible, like...
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. I mean, I would assume you're still going to get it because, I mean, you're getting all of the data off of the chip. I can't fathom any way that would actually be possible, where you can just go in and overwrite the data until it's gone for, you know, that, I mean, particular purpose, so. Uh-huh. Mhm. Right. Yeah, you're, again, you know, you're doing a chip dump on that, if that's the way you're going about doing it. Now, with some of the more commercial automated tools, maybe it's not going to pull it off. But if you're going in and you're dumping all that data out, you're pretty much going to get it. So, yeah. Yep. Any other questions? Ah.
Just a quick one. You get a rental car at the airport, you have your phone, everything on Bluetooth, you hesitate for a moment to carry your phone in the car? Your professional opinion.
In my professional opinion, I think it depends on how far I'm driving, because I'm kind of like a 695 rock star is what I like to call it. So yeah, I mean, I do like to pair my phone just to have my music and obviously to be able to talk while I'm driving. Am I reluctant? Yeah, I am. I'm also reluctant to have a Gmail account, but I do.
Do you see any ways specifically that can go wrong?
I'm sorry?
Are there any specific attacks or anything?
You know, this is the thing. I mean, you got to make that decision for yourself. You know that when you're pairing your device, you know serial numbers, some of your data is going to pop up. And I say some of your data because when I ordered that Ford Sync from eBay, what I did was I took mine, I had a Ford Edge at the time, and I removed mine, inserted his to see what data I could get through the user interface, synced my phone for all of, I don't know, 2 minutes, and then I also attached it via USB to see what information was going to cross-pollinate. So, you know, you really got to make the decision for yourself, honestly, but yes, your data will sync. You're welcome. All right, anything else? Any other questions? All right, well, that's all I have. Thanks.
Welcome to this talk. This is Marty Lancaster talking about vehicle forensics.
Thank you. Good morning. I am both, thank you. I am both flattered and surprised to see the turnout. I'm still wondering where all the hungover people are. But thank you for coming at any rate. Today we're going to talk a little bit about vehicle forensics. I can tell you this is something that I get really excited about. These are our objectives today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and talk about what we're going to talk about. Then we're going to go into a little bit of history regarding the infotainment and the vehicular technology. As you guys know, this is a really new field, so I'm going to give you guys what I know. We're going to talk a little bit about the way ahead. We'll touch on trends and challenges. And then, of course, we're going to kind of get into the meat and potatoes of things, where we're going to go in and identify the accessing of the components and talk about how do we actually analyze that data. So a little bit about me. I work at Telecommunication Systems, or TCS. I'm an art of exploitation instructor, and my primary focus is the forensics track. So we have quite a few forensics classes, and that's where my expertise is. Before that, I was at DC3. Not sure if you guys have heard of that, but it is Department of Defense Computer Forensics Laboratory. I was there for about 5 or 6 years, and then prior to that, I really just focused on information assurance, did some ComSec analysis type stuff, and then of course I am prior Navy. Got to throw that in. All right, let's dive right in. So this is where we started, right? I like to kind of paint this picture for you guys. This is where we are now. Even more robust systems than that. Now, before we go any further, okay? So let's talk about telematics. This has been happening for a while, right? 1996, you guys remember OnStar? When that rolled out? They had kind of a lull there for some time, I believe, but everybody kind of caught on and said, you know what, this is a neat thing. Let's get this going. And of course, they wanted to then integrate the infotainment. Again, this is going to be some of your wireless protocols, and we're seeing more and more of those continue to emerge. More specifically, I want to address 4G LTE. Now, when we talk about the way ahead, towards the end of this presentation, I will tell you guys that is absolutely where a lot of the automakers and the teams that are coming together to do this are trying to go, is with the LTE, okay? So with the increase of infotainment system technology and telematics, the ability to differentiate between the two can be a challenge, okay? And as we move forward, as we continue to integrate, these two are going to become even more and more blurred. All right, this is kind of a fun slide. How many security people do I have in here? Yeah, okay, this is going to scare the ever-living crap out of you. I promise you. I know it does me anyway. All right, so 84%, a recent poll showed, 84% of drivers would like to control their features using touchscreen. Doesn't seem surprising, right? I mean, we already kind of are. But let's go a step further. When I say they want to use touchscreen, I'm talking odometers, gas gauge. They've truly expressed this interest. 83% want to receive updates wirelessly. Anybody see a problem with that? Okay, furthermore, 76% would actually like to connect to the internet using their vehicle as a Wi-Fi hotspot. I want to talk about something that is pretty controversial. If you ask 5 people, what is the difference between telematics and infotainment, you're probably going to get 5 different answers. And the reason for that is, honestly, you know, the lines are just pretty blurred. But I'm going to give you guys a pretty standard definition here, okay? Telematics is actually the combination of telecommunications and informatics. Makes sense, right? So basically, this is going to be your wireless connectivity. This is your connectivity. That's the word that you want to remember. Now, infotainment, that's going to be the combination of your information and your entertainment. This is usually what the user is going to identify as your interface, if you will. So those are where your differences are going to lie. Your telematics is going to circle around the connectivity, and then your infotainment is actually going to be more so the interface, the integration.